Hi, we're going to continue our tour of the Morrisville Dairy Complex milking system. Trying to keep these file sizes a little bit smaller, given all the pictures and stuff in them. So if you want to download them, you can. And we'll try to get them up on YouTube as well. Where are we going here? Got to get our laser pointer out. So again, here's our Morrisville system. We've got the utility rooms, got the vacuum line and the back pump. We've got the milk components down in the pit, full tank over here, and then we've got the high line here, and our pulsator line is way up top, and then our milk line. So let's start with the pulsators on this section. So our pulsators are up top here. They're connected directly to our vacuum line, which is this right here. And they're also connected to an atmospheric line that is here. So we have an atmospheric line, the air going in here is filtered. It just kind of flows in. And therefore that what's going in the pulsator from the atmosphere has been filtered, it's been cleaned, and that's going to reduce the maintenance on our pulsator. Coming out the bottom of our pulsator, we've got that twin line that runs all the way down to our milking unit. So a close-up look at the pulsators at Morrisville. Again, we have a dual chamber. So we're doing half of our milking machine in one cycle and then half on another cycle. Again, here's our air line. So this is going to go around and then it's going to go down to our lower air line here. So that's going to have dead ends in it because it really is not a huge flow of air coming in to basically fill this line going down in the teacups. So this is our air inlet, our atmospheric air filtered over in this line. We have our vacuum line here that goes around the corner. The vacuum goes in there and it's diverted. We have two operating cylinders here that alternate between pulling air from this line, the atmospheric line, and then pulling from the vacuum line. So each cylinder has its own line leaving. So one for the right side, one for the left side. Go through, and the plunger or diaphragm that goes up and down says you get to go, 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 you get to go. And that continues on pulsating those outer chamber, the teacup, which is what this is connected to. And that's how we get our milking phase alternating, hopefully very cleanly with our massage phase. Here's kind of looking at it from the bottom. Again, here's our vacuum connection up top here. You can barely see it, is our atmospheric connection. And then we have our two lines coming off the bottom, one for each pole. That twin line comes down. And again, we have the one half is doing the front half of the milking unit, the two teacup chambers in the front. Again, that air in this tube comes to the outside of the teacup, and we have the other one going to the back, alternating the atmospheric and vacuum air in the back or outside of those teacups. Closer look at that, making sure you can see that well. So you've got those T's there, T there. It's important that the air and vacuum flow unimpeded through these long lines and through these T's. So every once in a while, we got to take a look in them, make sure there's no gunk in there, and make sure there's no buildup. We want to make sure that there's no cracks in the lines going through, either here, usually right at the connection, the end of the tubes is where we see most of our cracks. If there are cracks in the system, what's going to happen? We'll give that some thought. If there's air cracks, there's air leaks. if there's air leaks in the system, what's going to happen, what's going to be the state of the teacup if there is atmosphere leaking, air leaking in when we don't want it to. So we kind of took the pulsator. Let's go to where everything is generated. So here's the corner of the utility room. We've got one vacuum pump and another vacuum pump. So they're kind of there as redundant sets. You've got the exhaust line for the far one right there. And the exhaust line of the other one kind of goes up and out there. So the air that they pump out of the system gets blown outside. Usually there's a big oil spot outside historically from the oil in the vacuum pump. As we go up, we have connections to the vacuum reserve up here. So you've got lines going up. Going in, and then you have the systems that are leaving through the top coming through. So vacuum pump draws the air out. This is our reserve, and you could also call it, in a way, the distribution system. So we have two different sets of vacuum going to two different parts of the system. Those work their way around and they meet at the teacup. So we take a good look at our vacuum reserve. We've got the lines going down to our pumps here. So this is where the air is drawn out to generate that vacuum. We've got 1, 2 that are going to go to the pulsator loop that is high in the parlor. And then this line here is going to start going around and it's going to lead to the inside of the liner. It's going to be the vacuum at the teat end. So vacuum at the pulsator, vacuum at the teat end. We'll start with the pulsator line. So we leave our reserve tank and two lines go across and they break through the wall. There's that door down there as you leave the utility room. We come out of that wall and then we have two lines that go up and over and down, and they're going to meet a circle of PVC that runs around the top of the milking parlor. So that is the vacuum that is provided to the pulsator line. Having two different routes there helps make sure that we have uniform vacuum at all, in this case, 16 pulsators. Another look at the same thing from the opposite side. You got your lines going up, over, and then down, and then you've got your pi line going through there, and you're going around there, so you've got your circle. Another look at the coming down area in the parlor. So you've got the PVC going around, you've got a loop around the entire parlor, and then you can see the individual pulsator connections at various spots. They're kind of hidden here, but you can see the lines coming down from that area. So here's our vacuum line coming through. As we talked about, this direct connection here provides the vacuum. This line over here is the filtered, cleaned atmospheric air, and that line goes up to the top of the pulsator. And then you got the two lines coming down there from the pulsator. We can see up here are two lines coming down on the pulsator, our loop that goes around. This also gives you a view of the filter at the end of the atmospheric inlet. So filter air comes in through here, moves down, and then gets removed from the line and moved over to the pulsator. There's one loop going through, two loops, three loops. But here's the filter. You've got one on each side. These are not looped together. They are just a straight line going through. And given the amount of air that has to go through to get the job done, these do more than enough reserve of that atmospheric air. So to review, we started at the vacuum pump, we went to the vacuum reserve, we went across the wall, out into the loop, and we have a circle up top of vacuum that fed to the outside of the teacup through the pump. Let's go back to our vacuum pumps again, and we'll go the opposite way to meet at the teacup. So we have our pumps again, we have our vacuum reserve, and we're going to go out, we're going to go high around the top of the utility room. Here a line comes down in the corner. If we had our lab, you can see how all this gets done, and I would have made you trace things through. It's going to pop through the wall here in the milk house, and then it's going to work its way down into the pit. So that line comes through, that vacuum line up there is going along the wall before it goes across the ceiling. While we're on this picture, we've got our plate cooler here that the water coming in exchanges with the changes heat with the milk passing through. So milk, you got your sock here, filter, you've got your line coming into the plate cooler. You want to have that filtered before it goes in there, it's going to clog. You have the milk leaving and going up out through the pit. So you got your vacuum line up top. I guess we could look at these again a little bit closer. Again, your sock filter, milk line, plate cooler. You're going to go out through and then over to the bulk pump. So pumped out to the bulk tank up and over. Here's that line I was looking for. So this line comes across. So the plate cooler and the filter are behind me. I'm looking up. We've got that line going across. And it's going to come down here. As that comes down, we've got our sanitary trap right here. Make sure that no liquid from the wash cycle or the milking cycle gets back into the vacuum lines. It would be, given the distance these things have to travel, it'd be really impressive if we got milk all the way to the vacuum pump, but it is possible. So that sanitary trap there is an opportunity to make sure that doesn't happen. We go from the sanitary trap to the receiver jar. We've got our sensor here that says when it's full, pumps out to a certain level below. You've got your line going across the floor here. That's going to go around the corner and over to our filter, then the plate cooler. We've got our two lines coming in. So line down, and then our cleaning lines that we have to hook up when we run our wash and our sanitize cycles. So we can see that the milk goes across the floor, comes up here, eventually gets into our sock. You've got your rinse and sanitize tank over here. We're going to focus on our regulator, our vacuum gauge, and well, I guess that's our vacuum cage. So you've got your regulator here that's going to allow air in should the vacuum get too high. We don't want to use that too much, but we got to make sure the sponge here is clean and the system to open and close that is lubricated, well maintained, so it opens smoothly when it's supposed to and lets in that air to prevent the vacuum from getting too great and causing damage to our cows. We have our vacuum level. This is kind of the main reading here. We're reading that in this local area, and this number is copied out into the parlor so we can keep an eye on things. So that's as we come down that line, we got our sensor, looks like it's right here next to the regulator. So, or at least close by anyway. So somewhere in this line before we get to the sanitary trap, we'll measure our vacuum, and again, a few points lower will be our T-den vacuum as a general rule. So again, we have that secondary one there that copies whatever the other one says. That's way up in the parlor. We've got our two systems here, so we've traced the pulsator line, that loop high in the parlor. You can go back through and make sure you understand that. We have our vacuum line for the T-end. It goes up and through, down through the pin, through the receiver jar, and then it goes into our low lines, up through all the milk components, our long line, our Affy milk, our uh, whey jar, up in through our long milk line, the claw, and up into our through the short teacup and up into our uh, teacups. So again, you've got the pulsators are going to alternate that vacuum atmospheric air, vacuum atmospheric air. Our inside of the liner, our teacup is going to be constant vacuum at the T end. So I think this is the last slide. I hope this is what you guys are can follow what we're doing, but this is kind of a tour without having to come up here. What I'd like you to do, at least give it a try, and I think this is in another video. I'd like you to see if you had, let me know if you have access to a milking system that you can take a look at and see if you can find all the parts. That's what we're doing. You really need to be able to go into a system and say, okay, here's the pump, here's the vacuum reserve, here's the pulsator lines, the vacuum lines going around, here's the trap, here's the regulators, all those things, all those parts, and we eventually get to the milk lines up through the milking machine, where are the pulsators, being able to figure out all those parts of the system. So we'll give you that as an assignment moving forward.